even though trauma is a fact of life, so is our innate capacity, our resilience to rebound from traumatic experience. And when I started working with people in the end of the 1960s, 1970s, I was astonished by the wide variety of events that could cause people to have traumatic reactions. I mean, of course, we all think about childhood abuse, about rape, and about war, but there are many more ordinary sources of trauma. For example, automobile accidents, sometimes even a fender bender, can cause a traumatic reaction. Why? Because we're sitting in the car, all of a sudden somebody comes from behind us, hits it, and again our bodies go into this startle response. They go into this protective response. And if we don't know how to come back to the relaxed state, to regulate that kind of arousal, then again we will stay stuck there. So also I discovered that medical procedures, invasive medical procedures, were also a common source of trauma, especially when people would go under an anesthesia if they were frightened. Many times when I started working with people in the 60s and 70s, these were many people who were born in the 40s and 50s and had, for example, tonsillectomies with ether. And they were terrified that as children they were held down and mask was put on them. They felt suffocation and went under the anesthesia in a terrified state. But this is, fortunately, there have been great improvements about that, but still invasive medical procedures can potentially be traumatic. But if we prepare ourselves for them, and if we know what we can do with emotional first aid, we can reduce the likelihood that these things will produce trauma. And I'll, in a little bit, give you an example where I applied it to myself. So when I started to work with people and to see how wide the sources of trauma could be, I wondered, how do animals in the wild respond to threat? Because they're threatened all the time. I mean, we humans experience threat relatively rarely, whereas animals experience that on an everyday basis. And so I wondered, what was it in the animals' experience that must allow them to rebound from threat? Because if they didn't, if they experienced the same kinds of symptoms and the same kinds of freezing that human beings experience, they wouldn't have survived, and the species wouldn't have survived. So let's look at this scenario. There's a herd of impala grazing in a savanna. And behind the brush, a cheetah is stalking the herd. And then when it gets within strike distance, it chases off at 65, maybe even 75 miles an hour. Now, this is the amount of energy that goes into our survival response. I can imagine the muscular energy that it takes to sprint at 65, 75 miles an hour. This is the same energy that allows a mother to lift up a car and to pull her trapped child out to save her life. It's an extraordinary amount of energy. So if we are prepared for threat and we don't, so to speak, use that energy up, so that energy is all dressed up with nowhere to go, then that energy gets locked inside of us. In this pursuit where the cheetah is after the gazelle, sometimes just as the cheetah is getting ready to make the final lunge, the impala or the gazelle falls to the ground and appears to be dead. It's motionless. And what's happening is the animal is going into a profound physiological state called tonic immobility, and it appears to be dead. There's no movement. There's almost no breathing at all. And frequently, the predator animal, in this case the cheetah, will grab the gazelle, will take the gazelle and drag it and stash it under some underbrush so that she can go back and get her cubs and bring them back to show them how to make the kill. And during this time, the impala actually may come out of this immobility response, out of this freezing collapse response, and just shake things off and rejoin the herd. So this state is a profoundly altered state of consciousness, and along with the fight or flight, or even deeper than the fight or flight, is this immobility response. Whereas humans have the same fight or flight response and the same freezing and collapse response as animals, animals in the wild normally come out of that response completely, whereas us humans get caught in it. And I think one of the reasons that we get caught in it is because we're afraid of the sensations that occur when we come out.